Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mulcahy Law Firm's special Facebook Live to address the many questions that community associations have today regarding the coronavirus epidemic and how we all need to be responding to comply with our legalities under Arizona and federal laws, and also to help you ease anxiety and help you answer questions during these difficult times. First, I'd like to just start out by saying that we are here for you. We want to answer your questions. We have received an outpouring of questions regarding how best to handle association business during the coronavirus pandemic. And so we're here for you. Our team has been on call all weekend and is working to help answer your questions. So we want to provide assurances that our office is open and we are here to help you with any of your questions. First, I'd like to start out by thanking the Mulcahy Law Firm team. Now more than ever, it's been so wonderful to recognize what a wonderful team I have and how hard everybody's working on the team to help service our clients. So I'm very happy to be leading such a wonderful team, and I thank them for all their dedication to our clients and our firm during this difficult time. Well, we're in unprecedented times. If you had asked me a month ago if I would be talking about this on Facebook Live, and trying to address these issues, I would have said I don't think that's possible, and I didn't anticipate it. But one of the great things about working with our firm is that we like to be agile and we like to adjust to market circumstances. And so we have spent a lot of time over the past week thinking about what's the best advice for your associations so that you can stay out of legal trouble and keep your associations effectively running. Well, first, let's just start out with the facts that are facing Arizona on the pandemic. On March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared a coronavirus outbreak, a pandemic. As of the last update in Arizona coronavirus count has risen to 27 as new cases in Arizona at this time. Universities, schools are closed. Many associations are canceling or postponing meetings. Our governor has requested that all parties or mass gatherings of 10 or more people not be conducted. We've all learned a new word, social distancing, and we all need to be social distancing from each other at this time. Just some opening thoughts before I start answering the many questions that are coming into our office at this time would be, I'd like to give some just general advice for associations dealing with this crisis. And then I'd like to get into the specific questions which we've been receiving over the past few days. First, communication. Communication is necessary during this time. Associations need to be communicating often with their owners regarding different things that are occurring at their associations, such as clubhouse closings, events being canceled, what a plan is for an annual meeting that may be scheduled in April. Or just telling them, hey, we're waiting a week to see how market conditions continue before we make a decision on things, and we'll get back to you. But I think at least a weekly check-in is necessary so that you are providing good communication to your owners. Obviously, if you have Facebook or you have an online newsletter or constant contact where you're contacting your clients, I really think that that is something that you should be doing often so that people are in the loop as to what's going on. Because as we all know, if you're not communicating, people are, guessing what's happening, rumors are spreading, and so we want the association's board to be the trusted advisor that is giving information regarding your community to the membership timely and often. Also, I would suggest that you post any relevant city or state notices for your residents as links in any communication that you're sending out, so that if people want to do a deep dive and get more information, they can click on those links to obtain more information. The second thing I want to talk about is leadership. Leadership is needed by association boards and by management companies during this difficult time. And one thing that something that I've always lived by is that the cream always rises to the top in challenges, and this is a challenge for all of us. And we're all trying to get our arms around the market changes, the circumstances that are changing, problems that are coming into us faster than we can handle them. And so we need leaders now in our community associations who are not going to panic, who are going to make good decisions for their community based upon their trusted advisors' advice, and who, frankly, are going to be able to take a little bit of criticism at times. This morning, I was working on an issue, and I've gotten this call several times over the past few days, so I think it's okay for me to mention it to you, that the association decided to cancel an annual meeting. And next door in their community exploded. People, thought there was some sort of a conspiracy theory, that this was, they didn't want to have the annual meeting because, they didn't like the candidates that were running, or whatever the situation is. Obviously, calm and rational minds understand that that is not what's going on here, but that's what's being discussed on Nextdoor. And so what we really need to be thinking about as leaders is we're going to have to ignore at times some of the white noise that's out there that's undermining our ability to get the work done that we need to get done for our associations. And so what I'm advising that client in that particular case was, have one person on Nextdoor, one person on the board post on Nextdoor, that the association will be providing more information regarding this. And, the reason why that we're canceling this is because the governor has requested that mass gatherings of 10 or more people, not happen at this time. And a lot of people are saying, well, can we have teleconferences? And we're going to be talking about that a lot more on this Facebook Live call. But what I can tell you is that, there's some time and planning that needs to take place before we can move forward with having these teleconferences or conference calls. And so we don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction and, try to get a teleconference together for 1,000 people in 48 hours and not have all of our things together that we need to have together, like password codes and logins, and have people have the app on their phones. So we have to have a little bit of patience in addition to leadership at this time. And so one thing I'd like to do, to close the discussion on leadership, is just remind the boards and the management companies that we are here to help you. We know as leaders you may be taking the heat from your communities regarding some of the decisions that you're making. If you need reassurances or you need advice about the decisions that you're making, please reach out to us. We're here to help you, and we have your best interests at heart. The next thing I want to talk about is practicality. We have to be practical at this time. I talked to a client this morning where we were talking about the fact that he had several annual meetings coming up for his sub-associations, and we don't really want to cancel them because under Arizona law, we have to have a meeting once a year of our members. And they've already been noticed, and it's, we would like to continue forward with them, but because of the current situation in our state and in our country and in our world, it's just not possible. So I think we have to be practical and just accept that there are going to be things that are going to have to be canceled. Bingo may not go on this month. It may not go on next month. And I think we're all seeing that in every phase of our lives, right? I mean, our children may not even be going to school for the rest of the school year. And that's a crisis, trust me. But, I think we just have to be practical and recognize that things are changing, and, it's okay for us to cancel things. We should not have cancel guilt. We should plan for the future so that when the timing is right, we can do it the right way and consistent with, Arizona law based upon market conditions. But it's okay to cancel things. So just be practical and pragmatic on these things so we can move forward. Okay, we have a ton of questions, which is awesome. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out this today talking about different categories of questions that we received this morning regarding the Facebook Live. And the first part of the questions are going to be dealing with community spread and a community association. So the first question is, should the association establish an emergency plan in case someone within the association tests positive for coronavirus? Answer, yes. Do it now. Based upon what we're seeing around the country, around the world, it's a very strong possibility that this is going to occur in your association. And so we need to have a plan in place so that we don't panic, at the last minute and when it happens and do something that, may not be professional or may violate somebody's personal rights. So we definitely would suggest that associations come up with a plan. Our firm is here to help you. And some of the things that we would suggest to be in the plan are, make sure that whoever's providing the information that one of your residents has coronavirus or may have been exposed to coronavirus, it needs to be verified. We're definitely not operating on a rumor-only basis. And so we would need to have, some sort of written documentation letting us know that. And I also think we have to be careful how we word any sort of a communication that we would send out to our owners regarding the situation. And so if that's happening to your association, I encourage you to reach out to our firm and we'll help you write up something that would be case specific for what's going on in your association. I think I have to address this because I know it's going to come up. What if somebody thinks they've been exposed or they just took the test but they haven't gotten the results yet? I think we should be careful on jumping the gun on something like that and not be broadcasting that to members. I think we're going to have the action plan for in the event that we actually do have a resident that has it and the measures that are being taken by that resident. And I do not think that we should be naming the resident unless that person gives permission to be named. Great question. Next one. What responsibilities does the association have if an owner or resident in the community tests positive for coronavirus? So I also got this question this morning. This is kind of an interesting one. So the association received notice that somebody has coronavirus and is a resident in your association. What are our responsibilities? Well, I think we have to look at what case law in Arizona has said previously. And kind of the thing I was thinking about this morning when this question came up for the first time was, under the Woodmar versus Martinez case, we have a responsibility to, make our common areas safe in our communities. And so I think hand in hand with that would be that we would have an opportunity to, or we should be giving owners notification that this has occurred in our neighborhood and that person is in quarantine and, just notifying of that. Now, again, we shouldn't be using first names, last names. We would need to have something official in writing stating that this person does in fact have the virus. But I do think we have an obligation under the Martinez versus Woodmar case, in my opinion, that we have to keep our common areas safe. And in the Martinez case, it was free from crime, but in this case, it would be, free from disease spread. So I really do think that would be something, an obligation, in my opinion, that associations would have to notify residents. Now, recognize things are moving at lightning speed right now, and it's very possible that the city, town, municipality, or state may put that notification out before we have an opportunity to. And if that happens, that's okay. I still think that you should, in fact, still be notifying your residents. And of course, when you do that, there's going to be a ton of questions. Well, what do you do in association to make sure that we're safe on the common areas? And that kind of goes right back to what I started our communication with about, or started this FaceTime Live with about communication. So, we should be communicating to our residents what we're doing right now on our common areas in terms of, are we disinfecting to CDC standards? What are we doing specifically? Are we closing our common areas? Making sure that people are having a high comfort level as to the measures that the association is taking. Do we need to talk to our insurance agent about any special insurance regarding this association? Well, I think it might be a little too late to buy new insurance, unfortunately, but of course, yes, it's a great idea to reach out to your insurance agent, ask them if what our policy might cover on anything that may come up in the future. Some things that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I got this question this morning too, would be, what if we have an owner in the future who claims that they got the virus from using the gym equipment in the gym at the association or whatever? And do we have liability for that? And, that's a really tough question to answer because, there's a number of things that they'll have to prove. Of course, yes, we do have a duty to keep our common areas safe, but, this is the type of thing that, we can't see it. on the equipment. So we don't know if it was there at that time, and if we evaluate it further under legal principles, did we breach our duty? I don't know. Somebody could sneeze, or we can be right there with the spray bottle to catch the particles that are in the air. Probably not, right? So, I think it's going to be really tough to prove that we breached our, obligations to the association, and then cause. Like, were we the cause, or was it when they went through the drive-through at, In-N-Out Burger? So I think all these are questions that are going to be answered in the future. My feeling right now is no. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to prove that somebody contracted this from, using the equipment at the association or touching a door handle at the association. That would be my initial reaction. Of course, if somebody files a complaint against the association and there's a lawsuit in the future, most associations have insurance that cover them in the event something like this happens. So just remember that, if anybody is claiming that, you'd want to make a notification to your insurance agent right away. And I don't know if that's going to be coming up down the road. There are a few cases right now in Arizona, but we know from what we know that things are going to be expanding in the future. Okay, should we let vendors on our property to clean in our association, to service our pool, to do our landscaping? This is a tough call. I think my initial reaction right now is yes. I mean, we have a duty as an association to, maintain our properties within the association. And so, yes, I do think that we have an obligation to do that. But I think we also have an obligation to be reaching out to our vendors and finding out what's going on within their companies. What precautions are you taking, vendors, to ensure that our residents are safe, and have a paper trail on that so that we are, able to provide that to any residents that may be concerned about this. Now, there are some other situations. We represent some high-rises, and some of the high-rises are now saying no visitors in and out of the association. Now, that is a case-by-case basis, and sometimes they're allowing care workers in, but they're not allowing like the extra, maybe people that are coming in for deliveries or asking them to leave them outside the front door of the building. And I think every association needs to evaluate what your needs are and how much danger there is for your community, and then decide how you want to go from there. And our office is here to help you as you navigate through those questions, because every association is different. But if you live in just a regular homeowners association and your landscaper is coming in to landscape the property, I mean, I think as long as there's social distancing between the landscaper and the association residents, and you've talked to the landscaping company and they're enacting proper care in terms of sanitation according to CDC standards, I think you should be fine to let them in at this point. Okay, the next question is, does the association bear responsibility and liability if the HOA does not follow CDC guidelines, so the Center for Disease Control guidelines, and someone sues us as a result of death or severe illness? That's a really good question. So, what exactly do the CDC guidelines say, right? We're not cleaning experts for associations, but I would familiarize your staff for your association with what those guidelines are, and you can find those on the CDC website. And I think that we should do our absolute best to comply with the CDC guidelines. Can we be held liable if, for some reason we haven't followed CDC guidelines, to the T? Possibly, but I'm kind of doubtful on that. I mean, I think that what we really need to be thinking about here is, are we doing the best with the resources that we have in this emergency? And so if the CDC guidelines are, you should be having hand sanitizer in the front lobby of your building or at the entrances or near your mailboxes where people pick up their mail, and we can't find hand sanitizer anywhere, well, of course, how can we do that? So what's our pivot? Are we going to be washing these areas down daily or twice a day with, some sort of a cleaning agent that would be consistent with CDC standards? I think that's a good idea. But in these changing circumstances, we all just need to be doing our best. And obviously not just ignoring things. We need to be taking actions to make sure that we're doing our best. Okay, next question, board meetings. Should we still have our regular monthly board meeting, but just social distance? And, the same question goes with the annual meeting. Should we continue forward with our annual meeting, but social distance? Well, I would say over the past 4 or 5 days, most of our clients are canceling their most immediate meetings. So, our meetings that are, in the next month, I would say that most of our clients are just outright canceling them at this time. We have a few, I'd say about 10 or between 5 and 10, where they're doing teleconference meetings, which is awesome. We would really highly recommend that you do that. But what we're finding with the clients that are trying to do these meetings by teleconference is that there's a technology curve, and some people don't have the technology to do this. And then even if they buy it, like if they buy the Zoom app, the people that are trying to log on are having difficulty logging on. I mean, it's not a super complicated system, but you do need to download the app, and you do have to have your call-in information to get on the application. So, trying to get somebody to figure that out in 48 hours or a couple days, it might be more challenging. So, just to answer the question quickly, do we still have to have it? I guess the answer is no at this time. I mean, like I said, we have to be practical here. If you can't get it together and have a meeting right now, that's okay. Do I suggest that you still have board meetings and annual meetings, but just social distance? I really don't. In light of what the governor has stated regarding, that we shouldn't be having meetings of 10 or more people, I just don't think it's a good idea, even if you are social distancing at this time. So I think we need to see how this unfolds and then make decisions going forward. The next question was, can we just cancel these meetings? I think I've answered that. Yes, that's what a lot of our associations are doing. But what's our pivot if we have a ton of emergencies? I have some associations that have been contacting me, telling me that, hey, our, landscaping company is moving on to greener pastures, and we need to make a decision to hire a new landscaping company. And that's happening on, April 1st, and our board needs to meet. And so in those circumstances where you really do have business that needs to be conducted, what we are recommending is that you notice the meeting. If it's true emergency where you can't wait 48 hours to make a decision, you can suspend that 48 hours notice that's required under Arizona law. Put the notices out that you're having a meeting, and then have all the information regarding how the meeting's going to be conducted. And probably the two options that I suggest would be to have a conference call where everybody can dial in that wants to participate. And you have all that information on the meeting notice, and then you just have the meeting via conference call. I know somebody's going to say, well, doesn't state law say that the meeting has to take place in Arizona? Well, yes, but that law was written before the pandemic hit us, and I think we need to be practical and pivot. Okay, so it's okay for you to have your board meetings or even an annual meeting by a conference call or by a Zoom teleconference call. Try your best, to get that notice out 48 hours in advance. And then to start conducting business as usual via the conference call or the teleconference call. And there's going to be a learning curve. We just set up a call for somebody in our office for Friday at 4 p.m. And it's not actually going to be in our office. It's going to be by teleconference using the Zoom system. And this board hasn't used Zoom a lot. And so what I suggested to the board is, let's have a troubleshooter for the people that are trying to get into the teleconference, so that they don't have anxiety. If they aren't able to get in, they have a place that they can call, and that troubleshooter can help them get into the meeting. Also remember that with conference calls and with Zoom, you can tape those calls, which is awesome. And so you can also send out that tape of the call after the meeting. So if people had difficulty getting into the meeting, they can listen to it after the fact. It's important to know that just even for this call today, for this Facebook Live, we're taping it, and we're going to be sending it out to a number of people to help answer their questions regarding associations. The next question is, can we host a board meeting via teleconference or video conferencing? And can your firm help facilitate this? So yes, we just talked about this. You can have your meetings via conference call, or you can have it by teleconferencing where you actually see the people, similar to what we're doing right now. And yes, our firm can help you. We are hooked into the Zoom technology of Zoom teleconferencing, and we can help you set that up. And we'd be happy to help you set that up and train you on it and get the notice out to help your association. Next one is, should we just cancel our annual meeting altogether for 2020, or should we just postpone it? I think that's a really great question. My advice to you is at this time, just postpone it. Because remember, things change. We don't know what our new reality is here in these troubling times, but maybe by summer, things will have calmed down and we're able to meet together like we normally meet. So I would say, don't make any harsh decisions right now. I think the best thing to do is to postpone it, tell people why you're postponing it, and then let's reevaluate conditions in an appropriate amount of time and decide how we're going to handle it going forward. And if any of you do have an annual meeting or board meeting that's coming up, what I would suggest to you would be communicate. Make sure that you're telling your owners what you're doing. So I have a board that contacted me over the weekend and they said, hey, we have our annual meeting at the end of April. What should we do? Should we cancel it now? I mean, they're kind of worrying about the notice needs to go out. And I said, I think you should just put the word out that, you're going to be postponing it for right now. And that we'll be in touch with you when we have more information. Okay, here's another one. We have an upcoming election of officers and an annual meeting on April 26th. Our board terms are 1 year. There are no provisions in the bylaws or the CC&Rs to accommodate or validate a date change. Can the election be delayed? Votes can be cast at the annual meeting. Are there alternative ways to facilitate an election process? Okay, great question. Okay, so you've got your annual meeting coming up April 26th. I'm assuming by the nature of this question that your documents require it on that date. And because you said there are no provisions to accommodate a date change in our documents. And so this is going to be one of those times where we just need to be practical. Remember we talked about that at the beginning of the Facebook call? I think we need to be practical. It's not going to happen likely on April 26th in person in Arizona. What you could do, you have plenty of time now. I think, probably a really good idea would be to, get out and communicate with your residents. Find out if they are okay with postponing it until maybe the fall or the summer, or if they really feel like there's issues that need to be discussed right now. And if they do feel that there's issues that need to be discussed right now, and maybe even your board already knows that, if there are some real pressing issues, then I would go ahead and have your annual meeting via teleconference or conference call and do all the business that you would normally do at the annual meeting, via conference call or teleconference. And our office or your management company should be able to facilitate counting all the ballots during that call. So we would be counting the ballots for you and then providing the election results. Part of the teleconference or your management company could also do that. So it's very feasible that we can make this work. We just have to make sure that the notice that we get out has all the information that the residents will need to be able to dial into the teleconference or the conference call. Let's see, can votes be cast at the annual meeting? Now that's a good question. Okay, so if we're having an annual meeting and we're having people return the absentee ballot, right? They won't be there. There's usually, in Arizona law, it requires us to allow people to return ballots for an election in an HOA or condo in person or in via absentee ballot, usually, which is mailed in. And so how do we handle that in person? That's kind of complicated, especially with many of these management company offices that may have closed doors right now and not allowing anybody in, or, a lot of you have on-site management offices. Maybe you don't want, a plethora of people coming in and voting. So we'll just have to figure out what your conditions are for your association. But I think it's very feasible that we could allow people to, electronically vote at the time the meeting's starting. Sometimes people like to listen and then give their vote, and our firm can help you set that up. So what we would suggest is I would stay away from the in-person meeting as much as possible, where people are going to try to come in and vote at the meeting. Even though the law requires that, I think our current market conditions require us to rethink that. And instead, what you could do is allow people to return the ballot by mail in advance of the meeting. Or if they want to return it during the meeting, we have somebody that's accepting emails so that they can vote right then and there as the meeting's progressing. And again, our firm can help you with that. We, either ourselves or the management company will be the ones that are collecting the ballots and then making sure that we get all of those ballots tallied. And a good way to know for somebody who's trying to vote during the meeting is that we should be responding to you, hey, we got your vote, or, received, so that you know that it's going to be counted in the election. Okay, what other ways can our board do business? Can we conduct business via email because we are in emergency times? This is a slippery slope, because I don't want anyone to say, Beth Mulcahy said on Facebook Live, it's okay for you to do all your votes by email. I'm not saying that, just so you know. What I am saying is that Arizona law on running emergency meetings is pretty clear, and it says that, the board is allowed to make decisions in circumstances that are emergencies. And the only requirements are that you have to take minutes of the board meeting when there is an emergency. And then at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, you are going to be reading into the record what the emergency was and then attaching the minutes to, the minutes for that board meeting, the regular board meeting, after the fact. And that way it gives people that aren't at the meeting, an opportunity to see what happened, via the next open board meeting. So that being said, what do we do if we've got true emergencies where we cannot get this conference call lined up, we can't get this teleconference lined up, we've got to make decisions now because we've got situations happening. Maybe you have, something occurring in your common areas where there's going to be a major expense and the board needs to make a decision on it immediately. Or there's a fire, or an insurance claim, or you've been served with a lawsuit and you're not sure what to do. I'm telling you in this call that I am okay with you making decisions via email in these emergency times. But don't overdo it. Don't go nutso on this, okay? Be really careful, because everything you're doing is ultimately going to be looked at with a very fine microscope. And remember, all of our homeowners are home and they don't have a lot of time on their hands. So there could be a lot of conspiracy theories swirling around our neighborhood. So we don't want that to happen. So if there is an emergency and you are making a decision via email, remember, if you have 48 hours, obviously try to do the teleconference or the conference call board meeting where you can make the decision after notifying the owners and allowing them to call in or dial in. For the call. If you can't, do it by email, and then again at your next regularly scheduled board meeting, which will probably be by teleconference or conference call, then read into the record what the emergency was and the actions that the board took. And just kind of a closing word of caution, be careful. In these difficult times, of course, we have to continue on with the business of the association. But what I really do not want to see is associations thinking that they are getting, A-OK by me just to make all your decisions by email during this time. I'm not saying that. I'm saying limited only to emergencies. And I do feel that in an emergency circumstance that the majority of the board can make that decision by email. And again, this will be, just during the pandemic time right now. We're going to have to reevaluate conditions as things continue to unfold in our country. Hopefully we'll be back to normal again soon and we won't have to be worrying about a lot of these questions. Here's a good one. Everyone on our board wanted to quit last week because we were sick of being on the board. But now we don't know if that's a good idea with all the unrest related to the coronavirus. Okay, this is where we need to dig deep. Okay, remember we talked about leadership at the beginning of this call. This is a time where we cannot have the entire board resigning and just throwing their hands up for your association. That is, I really genuinely do believe that would be a breach of your fiduciary responsibilities if you did that. Because when that happens, even when we don't have an emergency going on around us, unfolding and changing every day, when the entire board resigns, that creates an emergency, right? And so we have another emergency on the side with the pandemic. We don't need two going on at the same time. So I'm asking you, please have leadership, stick it out. If you're not happy, call our office. Let's figure out a solution. Let's get, if you are going to resign, let's come up with a transition plan. There are ways that we can do that. If somebody resigns from the board, oftentimes the bylaws allow us to appoint somebody, to fill that vacancy. So let's have a smooth transition and make sure that we don't put the association in a really bad position by doing something like that. We have HOA business that was planned on April, approving documents such as approving final updated documents. Is it your recommendation that we hold the annual meeting first and then add a special meeting in April for business instead of waiting until the third week in May? Okay, so it looks like this association has a lot of different things going on. They're talking about amending their documents, and they have an annual meeting coming up, and they're just not quite sure what to do. I think we kind of hit on some of these points already today, but let's just revisit them. So if you're going to hold your annual meeting, it cannot be an in-person meeting, in my opinion, at this time, and so you need to do that via a teleconference. And our office can help you by, allowing you to use our Zoom technology to have a teleconference, or you can just do it by a conference call, which might be easier if you have owners that are less technology savvy. And so we would suggest, determine, when you're going to have it. You have to give the same notice that you would be required to give normally under the law, so at least 10 days notice before an annual meeting. And then let's conduct that meeting via conference call or teleconference. Trying to also, do amending documents at that annual meeting. You might be able to put it in there and also discuss it at that time, or maybe you want to push that discussion off until May and do the separate teleconference or conference call for that. And one other thing, just going back to being practical, we got a lot going on right now. And so maybe we need to just put a pause on the amendments, the CC&Rs, for a few months and, let that rest a little bit while we're seeing how the national and state events unfold. Okay, should the association continue weekly to send updates or wait until we can give dates for the next meeting? Okay, so this goes back to communication again. Please, associations, during these difficult times, make sure that you're communicating early and often to your owners about different things that are going on in your community. And if you don't know the answer on something, it's okay to say, hey, we're going to wait and reevaluate whether or not this is going to go forward, and we'll let you know next week. So, I think just having continuing communication is important. And even if you don't have the answer about when the meeting's going to be, I think just to keep the rumor mill down, I think you should just say, we're working on it. This is what our plan is. We'll get back to you on X date, and then get back to them on that date. So great question. One more thing, a question that I just got right before we went on the Facebook Live was, does our association have a responsibility to check in on elderly residents that may not be able to get food or get out during these difficult times? Is that a responsibility of the association? And from a purely legal perspective, I would say, no, that's not an obligation that the association, is required to spearhead. But from a human side, I definitely do think that, this is something that our communities should be thinking about. We have seen a lot of wonderful things occurring in the communities that we represent over the past week, where communities are really coming together and helping neighbors out. And it's been really heartwarming to see how people are working together to help people. So while the association may not be, officially, knocking on doors and checking on people, I think that we should do nothing to limit or prohibit owners in our communities from reaching out and helping each other. And so I would just like to encourage you. I know I was at the grocery store yesterday and I got some water for one of my neighbors that needed it. Let's all work together and help each other out. This is a great time for all of us to shine as communities, and let's really encourage that behavior going forward. Okay, next questions are regarding the common areas. Should we close down our common areas? Do we need a board vote to close the common area amenities? Can the board make this decision in an emergency meeting? Great questions. Okay, so first let's look at what each association has in terms of their common areas and what they're responsible for. Every association in Arizona is different, so it's really hard for me to give, like a bright line rule on this, but here's some thoughts. We represent a lot of large master plan communities in Arizona, and many of these associations have a lot of amenities like pools, and they have clubhouses, and they have gyms, and shuffleboard courts. I mean, there's a number of different amenities, and many of these associations are telling me, hey, we don't have the manpower to keep these clean, consistent with the Center for Disease Control standards. And so they are electing to close their common areas. So for the large master plan communities, I would say that in my experience of the many that have contacted me, I would say almost all of them are taking steps to do that at this time. And they're not closing them forever, right? They're just saying, till the end of March. And I think for those of us who are watching the news, I mean, Nordstrom's closing, Crate and Barrel, I mean, this is not something that is novel. This is happening all around us. So yes, you're going to get pushback. Of course you're going to get pushback. I mean, I was firefighting this all weekend where we had, people jumping fences and, putting signs in their window saying this shouldn't be closed, whatever. I mean, I think as board members, this is where our leadership component comes in. We need to be leaders and be firm and say we're doing this for the health and safety of everybody in our neighborhood. And we hope you understand we are evaluating the current circumstances on a daily and weekly basis. And we're going to keep communicating with you so that you are aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, what if you have an association that doesn't have a lot of those amenities? Maybe you just have a common area pool. Is this something that we should close the pool? And how do we do that? Because, how do we chain it? Do we deactivate the fobs if you're getting in through fobs? Again, I think your association really needs to look at this on a case-by-case basis. I would say a majority of our associations are closing their pools, and if they don't have the way and access to deactivate the fob, or they don't have a lock on it, it just has a latch pursuant to whatever the county requirements are, they are chaining it shut. Remember that if you're closing any of the amenities, great time to have excellent communication with your owners so that they understand the reasons why you're doing it, and they also are supportive of your decision. And remember that if people are critical, we just have to be firm and restate the reasons that we're doing it. Can the board make this decision by an emergency meeting? I would say that probably 95% of our boards are doing it that way. They are making quick decisions, and that is it is an emergency, and they are making those decisions. Now remember, if your board's making that decision that way, be sure that you take minutes. If the decision was by email, make sure that you're printing out those emails, and then at the next regular board meeting of your association, you'll need to read into the record what that decision was, when it was taken, who made it, etc. And I do feel that it can be made by majority vote. What if the owners continue to use the areas despite closures? Can an association stop the owners or residents from congregating in our common area lawns and greenbelt? Okay, this is where we got to kind of take the man overboard test and determine what's reasonable, right? What's practical and reasonable. So if we are closing our common area buildings, right? And I actually have a personal story on this. So my kids are out of school, so I have them on this little program every morning where we get up and go for a walk at 6:45. They're not real happy about that, and so we went for a walk. We're keeping our social distancing, don't worry. And we walked by the clubhouse at our association. And usually at that time, the clubhouse is full with people doing yoga. And it's closed right now where I live. And what I saw outside, it actually kind of heartwarmed me. I saw about 7 or 8 people outside that they were socially distanced and they were doing yoga stretches. And, you know, I don't really think I think it's man overboard for the association to be out there policing, saying, get back inside, you know, or you can't do those exercises here. You know, we have a dog, we just got a puppy. And wow, this has been a great time to get to know that puppy really well because my children are home and we're really enjoying it. So anyways, so can we still take our puppy to the Greenbelt for a walk? Of course, yes. You know, we have to be practical and reasonable here. But, you know, this is not the time to be hosting a concert on your common areas, obviously. And so some of these things, as long as there's social distancing, I think that's fine. And I don't think that we can, you know, tell people you can't go outside, obviously, or you can't take your dog for a walk or whatever. Let's be reasonable. You know, let's remember we're trying to sanitize the areas that we have direct control over. You know, we don't have direct control over the Greenbelt. There's no way we could sanitize that entire thing. So we need to be reasonable and practical when we're making decisions on things that we're going to be closing. Do we have to sanitize the gates at the pools? That's a great question. Well, I think it kind of depends on if you're closing it or not. If you're not closing it, then I would say, yes, you should be doing something to ensure that there's no virus spread. And that something is, you know, cleaning, disinfecting pursuant to the CDC standards. If you're closing the pool and they're not touching the gate, they're not going in, then, you know, no, I would say, you know, just put a note that the pool is closed, post a note there, and you may want to indicate, you know, that there is no sanitization right now in, you know, on the gate. Do you have any insight as to if or when Maricopa County will order the closure of HOA pools and jacuzzis? Now these things are like changing at record speed, so it could have happened 5 minutes before I went on this call and I didn't know it, but no, I don't have any notice of that at this time. But what I'm going to suggest that you do is be proactive as an association board and as association members and residents of Arizona. There's a wealth of information on the websites for your city, town, or municipality, also for the county. Regularly check those resources online, and they're going to be giving you the most up-to-date answers to a lot of those questions in terms of what's closed, what's open, etc. What do we do if our board can't agree on whether or not to close down our common areas, our common amenities, such as pool, clubhouse, and gym? Okay, well, that's kind of a problem. Just like any time, majority rules. So if a majority of your board does not want to close down the pool or the gym or whatever, that's going to be what happens. But do I think that's a good idea? I think you need to look at all the facts and circumstances to determine what's right for your association. You know, obviously as a board, I do feel that you have an obligation and a fiduciary duty to make sure that your common areas are safe. And so we are encouraging you to do this, but ultimately it's up to you. And I hope that all of you will make good decisions so that you're protecting, you know, the safety and the health of your residents. Does our association have insurance coverage if someone claims that they got coronavirus from our gym? So we talked a little bit about this. Can we be liable a few minutes ago? Now the question is, you know, will our insurance cover us if we are sued? And, you know, I don't know the answer to that because, you know, pandemics don't come around very often. But the best advice I could give you would be reach out to your insurance agent. And I am sure that they are swamped right now. So you might want to do it by email and just say, hey, you know, can you tell us a little bit about our policy? And if something like this should come up, would it be covered? And then you can take that information back to your board and discuss it at the next board meeting. I mean, like anything, I think it just depends on how it's worded. There may even be an exclusion for pandemics. Who knows? We'll have to look at that issue as it comes up in each policy. But I'd start by talking to your insurance agent and see if there's coverage. If I had to guess, I'd say no. There's probably some crazy exclusion at the back of the policy and, you know, 0.3 font. But let's see what they say. I'd be interested. If any of you here, make sure that you post on our Facebook page so that we can let everybody who's listening today know what your results of your findings are. Okay, economic impact. Wow, so scary right now, seeing the news every night of all the businesses that are closing, people losing their jobs. Our heart goes out to everybody in Arizona right now and around the world in our country, with all the difficult economic times that many people are facing due to these layoffs. And so what should associations or condos do if owners stop paying assessments because they are concerned about the economy? This is a reality. This is something that boards need to start planning for and have a plan so this doesn't happen. I think the best plan that I can give you is communication. We talked about communication at the beginning, and it just keeps coming back, and this is another example of where it would be really important to communicate. April 1st will likely be our next assessment payment by owners, and we have some time. We have 2 weeks basically, or just less than 2 weeks, and I would say that in one of those communications that you're sending out to your owners, remind people how important it is to continue paying their assessments, because we don't want to have a disruption in the maintenance of our common areas. We don't want to have the electricity at the association shut off. We want to maintain business as usual. And I think a really good way to approach this is just to remind everybody that, hey, we're a team, right? We all are a team, and we all have to play our parts in our team, and we have to live up to our obligations that we've agreed to. And as a board, we're living up to our obligations by maintaining the common areas and trying to keep everything safe to CDC standards. And it's your obligation now to continue paying assessments so that we don't have economic hardships in our associations. Okay, that being said, there are going to be people that don't pay, right? We know that. And so I think what you need to do is have a plan for those people who aren't paying. And of course, we want to be caring and understanding of different circumstances, but it looks like our federal government is going to be stepping in to help and helping every family that needs it. And so, we want to make sure that we are protecting our association too. And so some suggestions would be, have a plan. So if people don't pay their April assessment, I think that we need to be following up with them quickly, finding out what's going on. So send out a reminder letter right away as soon as it's past due on the 15th, or if there's a longer period for it to be due under your documents. And then I think that you need to be coming up with a plan internally about, are you going to send a second demand letter? Is it going to go to the attorney? Remember that there is a relatively new law that was passed that requires that we give 30 days notice to an owner before a matter can be turned over to the attorney. And so you'll want to be making sure that you're complying with that and putting the requisite language that you need in the notices that owners are past due so that the matter can be turned over to your association's attorney within 30 days after you sending that reminder notice. Now, from a financial perspective, I think your board really needs to keep an eye on this, especially your association's treasurer. You're going to want to make sure that you're monitoring the income that's coming in April, because we all need to be looking for trends. Hopefully it'll be business as usual. Many of you already have your owners on auto debit or auto pay, so hopefully there won't be any large changes. But if we start to see any trends in the industry, I can assure you I'm going to be talking about it on Facebook and through our Mulcahy memos that we send out every month, and giving you some advice and strategies on how to deal with this circumstance if it should come up. But again, to minimize the economic impact on your association, make sure you're communicating with your owners the importance of paying. And if owners don't pay, I think we need to be reaching out to them right away to find out what's going on, and then have an action plan to pursue the owners if they're not paying, because we can't have 50% of our owners not paying. We won't be able to meet our financial obligations as an association. Okay, next question. Our management company just sent us a notice doubling our management fee or telling us to find a new management company if we don't agree. What can we do? Will another management company pick us up and manage us during this uncertain time? Wow. Okay, that is very surprising to hear something like that. I guess like anything in our world, you really see people's true colors during difficult times. And so the question is, so now we have a double in our management fee, or go find another management company if you don't agree. Well, I want to, I think we have to think about it from the management company side too. I'm sure there are some reasons for that. You know, but again, I really find that troubling from, my perspective as legal counsel for an association. But anyways, so I think it is going to be difficult right now in these uncertain times to get a management company to take on new properties or bid on new properties. And so, in this particular circumstance, you may have to eat it here and pay double and see how things go for a little bit. Of course, this is going to depend on what the contract says with the management company. If the contract says that, they have the right to increase the fee or, terminate you, basically, of course, they have the right to do that. And so you'll need to look at what your management contract says to determine if that's even possible for them to do. But if it is, you may have to stay on with them until, some of the uncertainty in our world and our city and states is resolved. And, then you probably really do need to find a new management company, at that time. And, it can't hurt. You can reach out to management companies and see, if they are doing this right now. My feeling is, after talking to many of them, that they probably won't be, that they're all just in a holding pattern where they want to service their existing clients and they're not going to take on any new stress of adding new properties at this time. What happens to our association if our management company goes out of business due to the pandemic? I have not heard of any management companies facing anything like this. So I want to say that right now. I think my response from what I'm hearing from management companies around the valley is that they are adjusting to the changing circumstances and they are servicing their owners, business as usual. Of course, they're having to change how they do some things. They're not having in-person meetings anymore and they're canceling meetings, etc. But they are still able to function, many of them on a remote basis. Some of them have a bare bones staff in their office. So, I really don't see this happening in our industry. I think, that's not something that I anticipate is going to happen. But if they do go out of business, we'll be there to help you find a new management company and help you take steps that will be able to help protect you until you can secure another management company to help your association. What is your opinion regarding inspections of the community during this time? Should we stop any violation letters or fines to our owners? Great question. So, are we even able now to do inspections? I think you should take this back to your management companies and ask them. I'm guessing. Well, listen, we just have one person that goes out and does the inspection, and as long as there's social distancing, or that's fine, or this person is in their car, they never get out of the car, so we're fine with it. And if they're saying that, I think that is fine to continue with that practice. Should we stop violation letters? I think you're going to really have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. I would probably say no, but, I don't think this is the time to nitpick people, okay? I mean, I know people are going to have a lot of time on their hands, so let's hope they're pulling those weeds, right? Or let's hope that they're cleaning up things that need to be cleaned up on their property. And that might even be a really good communication that you could send out to people. Hey, friendly reminder, since a lot of us are home more, it might be a good time for us to do some of those projects at home so that our community can look better in the future. But should we stop the violation letters? I would say probably no. But I wouldn't get all nitpicky because I don't want to see you guys on Channel 3 as being a bad HOA that's going after people, during the pandemic. That would not be something that I'm recommending. Same thing on fines, as long as they're reasonable. I think that it's fine to continue with the fines, no pun intended. But I think that we need to be mindful that, this is going to create an economic crisis, and let's be reasonable. We don't want to just be lining our pockets with fines on our books, financial records of the association. Really what we should be doing is encouraging people just to correct the violation so that everything can, be corrected and it looks nice and we can all live in harmony in our association. So those are the first of my questions. I'm just going to check to see, do I have any other questions here that I might need to answer? I think we're good. I think we got through most of them. Okay, well, we just want you to know, just in conclusion, that Mulcahy Law Firm is here for you. We're here to answer your questions. we're thinking of different ways that we can get information out to you at no charge so that your association can be making good decisions, good business decisions in this difficult time. So know that if you're calling our office, we're going to pick up, we're here, we're going to answer your questions, and we have great advice to keep you guys out of trouble. And also recognize that we're going to continue to provide you with timely information as this pandemic unfolds. And so make sure you're liking us on Facebook, make sure that you are following us on all of our social media avenues. We're on LinkedIn, we're actively posting on LinkedIn, so that's another avenue. Contact me by email at bmulcahy, MULCAHY, at mulcahylaw.net. If you would like to be added to our mailing list that we send out a memo, we call them the Mulcahy memos, and we send those out frequently. And we're going to continue to update you. And if necessary, we'll continue to have more Facebook Lives to answer your questions. So everybody hang in there. We're rooting for everybody. We're rooting for strong communities, and we're rooting for neighbors helping neighbors. And I know that we are all going to get through this. And I can't wait to see you all again in person. But for now, we're probably going to be mostly talking by Facebook or by teleconference. And for some of you who have asked, I've got a lot of questions about what are you doing about your spring classes? Well, we're pivoting. We're thinking about how we're going to be conducting many of those by teleconference. So stay tuned. Make sure you're checking out our webpage, www.mulcahylawfirm.com. And we're going to be posting about all of our upcoming webinars and teleconferences and conference calls to answer your questions. So there's going to be a lot of education out there. At this time, we feel we want to be sensitive to really only talking about the pandemic issues, because those are the issues that are just most pressing. I mean, I know just even looking at my email, I'm getting emails from, different businesses that aren't related to the pandemic, and I'm thinking to myself, how can they be talking about that? We're all dealing with this. So, we're going to be dealing with the pandemic issues, probably for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then when we know the timing is right, we'll start doing some online education for our board members so that everybody keeps their skill sets sharp, and we're here to answer questions for you. So I want to wish everybody to, have a good day today. Happy day after St. Patrick's Day, my favorite day of the year. Yesterday was the most unique one I think I've ever had. And just to ask everybody, please be careful, practice social distancing, make good decisions for your community, be good leaders, communicate, be practical, and know that we're here to help you. So be safe, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.